Welcome to Informed Sources on News Channel 3, where we talk about the week's big stories with local voices. I'm your host, Greg Hurst. Thanks for joining us. In a moment, I'll introduce our panel, but first, here are tonight's hot topics. The Tennessee General Assembly wraps up its special session, passing landmark legislation, including an immigration bill that would make it a felony for city and county officials across the state to adopt sanctuary city policies. But the key achievement of the special session was the passage of Governor Lee's school choice plan, which will make millions of state dollars available to parents who want to send their children to private schools. We'll discuss the impact of the special session and what's next. And then following the controversy firing of Superintendent Dr. Marie Fagans, the Memphis-Shelby County School Board is facing a potential takeover by the state. We'll talk about how such a takeover would happen and the impact that it could have on your child's education. But before we begin tonight's discussion, let's introduce our panel. I am joined by Willie Simon, the newly elected chair of the Shelby County Democratic Party, and Worth Morgan, the recently elected chairman of the Shelby County GOP. Gentlemen, welcome. It's good to see you both. You're both political veterans, on different sides of the aisles, but you've been involved in politics for a while, and we know you're well versed in all of these topics, especially around the special session, so we're thrilled that you're here.
Thanks for having us.
All right.
I'm glad to be here.
All right, let's jump right in. Let's begin tonight with that immigration bill that was passed by Tennessee lawmakers during the special session. That bill makes it a felony for city or county officials anywhere in the state to adopt sanctuary policies, which are already banned under a previous state law. The bill also creates an immigration enforcement division within the Department of Safety, which will be overseen by a chief immigration enforcement officer who will be appointed by the governor. The legislation also requires the state to give legal, permanent non-citizens temporary driver's licenses instead of a standard license. Supporters say this will help prevent non-citizens from voting. Willie, let's start with you here. And first of all, any idea, virtually every Democrat voted against this particular initiative on immigration. Why is that?
Well, for one, it's such a broad and a wide-reaching legislation. I mean, when you start thinking about what's happening is, of course, we believe in safe borders. We want to make sure that people are voting, people that participate in our voting process are legal immigrants. But I think what happens is we didn't want to see these broad, wide-reaching legislations that go out and that could particularly target people and start identifying people as something that they're not. I have personal friends that have gone through the process of trying to become citizens of this country and really going through the process. And the process took an awful long time. I mean, it was a very tedious process that took a long time. And when they finally got their citizenship, there was a lot of stuff that happened surrounding that. So people that are aware, that kind of aware of how that process really works, there's not a clear, easy path to citizenship. So what we felt like is, we need to take a look at it and make sure that we give it, while we're putting restrictions, let's make the path a little bit easier for individuals to become citizens, and then we start clamping down on those things that we feel like we need to do to protect our country from people that are committing crimes or people that are illegal immigrants.
And Worth, we did hear from the administration they were going to primarily be targeting violent criminals who were coming into the country. And we heard from the White House press briefing, though, just after that no, pretty much everyone who's come here illegally is technically a criminal. So during those roundups, when they cast that net, they were bringing in all sorts of people, not just the violent criminals. To a lot of people, this seemed like the classic bait and switch.
Well, when you have millions of people, you're going to have a list of priorities, but it does affect Americans all up and down, I guess, the socioeconomic chain. So if you're talking about violent criminals, now you're talking about the people that are bringing in drugs across the southern border, fentanyl, cocaine, heroin. These are coming through the southern border, and they're distributed by people that are here illegally, that are operating as illegal aliens. And they are recruiting in our high schools, in our communities, and they are then distributing and selling those drugs in those communities as well. And it's having a devastating effect. So of course we're going to target those individuals. That should have been done already, and it hasn't been done to the scale that we're seeing now. In Memphis, we have a huge problem with crime. We don't need to be importing criminals from other countries as well. And then when you get on down the line, that's when you start talking about socioeconomics, where you have labor here in Memphis that is being exploited and is driving down the price of a fair wage. And if you're able to remove a large portion of that cheap labor from the pool that is here illegally, participating in our economy illegally, then people, the poorest of our communities, will have the opportunity to compete for jobs, and those jobs will have to pay a higher and fair wage, and they'll have the protection of law.
One of the key features that Republicans pushed on this particular legislation was the fact they wanted to criminally punish municipalities who were actively protecting people who were in the country illegally. Why did Republicans think that was important?
Well, so any legislative body can pass just about any bill or resolution. I come from Memphis City Council for 8 years. Memphis City Council next week can pass something that says anything they want to, and then the recourse for that, if it's against the Constitution or against state or federal law, is someone has to challenge it, has to take them to court, and it takes time to undo it. It is already against state law for a city or a county to say that they are a sanctuary city, but it would take time for the state legislature to challenge that and go through the court process. So they passed this legislation this week in order to preempt it. Essentially, since Trump administration come in and their commitment to enforcing the illegal immigration laws, they wanted to make sure that cities and counties weren't then going to go and declare themselves as sanctuary cities and that there would then be a long, drawn-out legal process to it. They wanted to preempt it and say, cut it off from the beginning. You can't do that. You have to follow state and federal law.
The ACLU is threatening to file a suit against this. Democrats actively opposed it. Why would Democrats oppose something when people are actively subverting the law?
Well, I think that's sort of like a loaded question. When we start talking about this subverting the law, I think one of the things that Worth just mentioned, if you pass a law and you decide that you're going to make it so wide-reaching to the point that you're expecting pushback from that, that means that you're kind of taking the situation and making it more than it needs to be. And as Memphis and Shelby County is concerned, I don't think we're listed as a sanctuary city. So when we have these conversations about what's going on in our state, then we say, oh, just to make sure we're going to put a big stamp on top of this to say, hey, you're really not a sanctuary city because we said you're not.
It ends the debate before it happens, so we can spend time on the things we need to be spending time on.
Right, but it also adds more complication to a debate that doesn't even need to happen. It's almost picking a fight with somebody that's not fighting you. Mm-hmm. And so I think there's an opportunity for us, if we had decided to say, hey, listen, one of the things that we want to make sure of is that we're still following the law as it's been followed the whole time that the whole time I've lived here. I've never heard the name sanctuary city even mentioned in Memphis or any city as it relates to state of Tennessee. But sometimes when we want to take these big, broad-reaching, wide-brushed approaches, then people want to push back because you see there's an opportunity for us to kind of muddy the water and make it seem like there's a problem that doesn't really exist.
Well, and another feature of this legislation was a special driver's license for those who are in the country illegally. Why would they have a driver's license in the first place? I mean, if you go to Europe, the entire European Union, if you're in the country illegally, you cannot get a driver's license. Why would that happen here in the U.S.?
Well, to me, it sounds like Worth mentioned a couple of things. He mentioned the fact that we have workers that are working in positions and for wages that are not equivalent to the wages that someone that is a citizen will work for. It seems like to me that we have a lot of businesses that are benefiting from that, and if you can give somebody a special license to give them some sense of validity, it gives those people the opportunity to employ those folks, have them working for them, and driving wages down. So I think we can't have it both ways. If we're going to go after the people that are working, shouldn't we be going after the folks that are employing those people?
Absolutely. No argument there. I mean, they are exploiting labor for their own benefit.
And are you worried, though, that this legislation is striking fear into the immigrant community, even those who are here legally, that they may be picked up off the streets just because of racial profiling?
I don't think the legislation is not. The debate around it and the hysterics that I would argue a lot is being turned up by the Democrat Party and its leaders saying things about the legislation that it's not. That's saying things about the president's words that he has not said himself. So I think the social media conversation and the traditional media conversation around it has stoked up more fear than there is, especially when you're talking about going after the gang members who are abusing these community members just as much as they're abusing people that were born and raised in there.
For those who do have those concerns, what is the threshold for arrest? Is it probable cause?
The threshold for arrest?
Yes.
According to the Constitution, it's always probable cause. If someone's arrested without probable cause, they're going to have a very difficult time in court. So, no, I think that's going to be a question for law enforcement in terms of where they draw the line and distinguish between somebody that they believe is potentially guilty of illegal immigration versus any other crime that we have on the books. We're going to hold everybody accountable to the laws that we have, and that shouldn't be a problem.
Well, can I
Of course.
speak on that? Yeah, historically, I mean, from my point of view, I mean, we've seen examples of where that stuff can be stretched out a little bit, you know, so to speak. When we talk about racial profiling and that kind of things, I mean, I've experienced some of that myself. And what basically happens is we hear this talk about Venezuelan gangs. Now, I challenge anybody to go out and talk to anybody in the immigrant community that may be of Latino or Hispanic community to say that person's a Venezuelan gang member. I mean, they may be from Mexico. They may be from Colombia. They may be from any of the Latin countries. And we get a chance to say, hey, because you look and you might have tattoos and you might look this certain way, now we have probable cause to pull you over and have a conversation with you. And the fact that you use the word criminality with the fact that they're illegal immigrants, now it gives people carte blanche to just pull them over just to see if you are. And so I think that if I was a person in the Latino or Hispanic community, I would be worried that I get pulled over just because people don't know and how to identify that. If I was a guy with tattoos riding in the car and I work construction, I happen to work a job where I'm in the public all the time, I would have a problem with being pulled over and being questioned about that. And I may be a citizen.
But if somebody's pulled over for another crime, if they come in contact with law enforcement for another crime, whether it be theft, burglary, any of the issues, speeding, driving without a license, and then an investigation or a conversation begins as to their
legal status,
that is perfectly valid and fair, and the courts have held that up time and time again. So it's not necessarily, they're not being pulled over for being Hispanic or Latino or for whatever their appearance may be. They're pulled over and the investigation begins because of another crime that has led to this conversation.
All right. Challenging debate, difficult discussion. Appreciate you guys being open about that. In the meantime, when we come back, we're going to shift our focus from immigration to education. After years of trying, Governor Lee finally gets his school choice plan passed by the General Assembly. The long-lasting impact it will have on your child's education coming up next on Informed Sources.